Okay.
Miss you, Melissa.
Hey, everybody. It's Parents Against SSFL, and I'm Melissa Bumstead.
Jenny Knack.
And today we're going to walk you through the Boeing's 2022 proposed NPDES permit. That is their National Pollutant Discharge something permit. It's what allows them to legally dump pollutants into the Los Angeles River, into the Arroyo Simi, where it has the potential then to impact the public, people who live nearby, people who go into the water, the environment, and obviously wildlife. With the small potential, it could even reach the Pacific Ocean. It is a real potential. We don't have any tests to prove that's where it's reaching, but that's like the logical ending, in my opinion. Is that fair to say, Jenny?
Yes.
Fairish, right? I mean,
yeah.
It's my concern. Can I say that's my personal concern?
And my personal concern is that it's ending up in my drinking water.
And not just your drinking water, it turns out. We'll get into that. So first we're going to pull up, well, why don't we tell you a little bit more about this permit process? So Boeing has to go through the Los Angeles Regional Quality Water Board. And is that right? You shook your head.
See, let me try it. Sorry. Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board.
There we go. We just call them the water board. So that's, now you know what we're talking about. And they are in charge of this national permit that allows Boeing to dump a certain amount of pollutants out of the site legally. And these, pretty much every company that has discharge has to have one of these. Boeing is not the only one that is polluting into the LA River, and probably not the only one into the Arroyo Simi. But it's still a big problem. And this permit is just shameful, inadequate in every way. And it's even worse than the one they had before. And you guys might remember during the Woolsey fire in 2018, this was the same type of permit that when Boeing had those 57 exceedances. Is that right, Jenny?
Mm-hmm.
57 exceedances. That was 57 times they went above the legal limit that they are allowed to discharge. And the things that we saw coming off of the Santa Susana Field Lab in that stormwater, the surface water it's called, included arsenic, cyanide, lead, mercury, gamma radiation. I mean, it was really dangerous contaminants, and Boeing didn't get fined for hardly any of that. Apparently, they and the water board are a little bit cozy. Hopefully that's not true anymore.
They waived all the fines they legally could, I believe.
Right. They said that it was an act of God that the fire happened and Boeing couldn't help it. But of course, we know if Boeing had cleaned up the Santa Susana Field Lab in 2017, like they had originally promised, there wouldn't have been any contamination to pollute that water. They wouldn't have had any exceedances. But Boeing is continuing to say they shouldn't have to clean up the site like they originally agreed to comprehensively. And they keep saying that contamination is not getting off site. And they keep saying that it's not hurting our community, the wildlife, or the environment. So this is their new permit. They have to redo it every 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we're going to take a look at today. We've put together a letter that we're hoping everybody will email out today. And I'm really sorry that it was last minute. You have until 5 p.m. today. Today is Tuesday, January the 18th, 2022. 5 p.m. today.
Super easy.
Pacific time.
And it's super easy to send. It's just a push. Just click.
Just add your name. But that's critically important. And unfortunately, they did not do an adequate public announcement, or how would you say that?
Well, they only sent it to a select list of people that they have on a specific, list of their stakeholders. I didn't get
I didn't get it either. No.
And the other horrible thing they did is they sent it before the holidays and gave 30 days for comment, while most of us families were, cooking meals.
Right. And then my family, we got COVID last week, so we were out.
Right. But it's a terrible time of year to ask people to sit and go through hundreds of pages of documents.
Especially when it wasn't put out as a large announcement. Again, you had to know exactly where to look on the website. You couldn't find it on their main page. When they said list of all the calendar events coming up, it wasn't listed there. And then we had to ask for additional documents to be able to tell what was going on. I mean, it was a bad process.
And we're still reading through those because it's no small thing.
57 pages ish.
I don't know. I haven't even gotten through the RPA stuff.
It's a lot. It's a lot. So thankfully, Jenny kicked butt last week, along with all the amazing people at Committee to Bridge the Gap.
Thank you.
We love them. Dan Hirsch was up with us till 9:30 last night, putting final touches on this letter that we're asking everyone to send out, which we again revised early this morning. And so we're always, as always, we're indebted to them, because to be honest, I never thought I'd be able to understand any of this. I thought it would be beyond me. And they worked diligently helping us. We also had some help from Heal the Bay, and a little bit of, well, we got some personal advice and other people. And so we're just really grateful to everyone. That's what I'm trying to say. So Jenny, could you pull up the letter that we're asking everyone to send out? We can go through it.
Yes.
Thank you.
And hopefully we can simplify everything
Best we can.
quickly for everyone, so they don't have to count pollutants.
I can't guarantee that it's quickly. I'm kind of assuming if you're watching this right now, you want to learn more about it. This isn't just the like how to push an email button. We're actually trying to teach you guys so you understand what the problem is, why we're addressing it the way we are, and maybe so that way if another permit comes up, you guys will be able to read through it with at least a little bit more understanding, because I know for me, it felt very empowering to understand this. And so we're trying to share that.
Can you see it, Melissa?
Yeah, I see it. Thanks.
Great. So again, as Melissa said, the deadline to submit this letter or comments of your choice is tonight, Tuesday, January 18th by 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And the beginning of the letter just gives a very brief introduction of the radioactive and toxic chemical contamination at the Santa Susana Field Lab, a little bit about the history, and just addresses the fact that pollutants are migrating off-site and have been migrating off-site in surface water, and that poses a health risk to us and the critters and people within the watershed.
Jenny,
Sorry.
could you, oh, that's okay. No, you're good. I just wanted to know, could you help define real quick what the difference is between surface water and groundwater that we're talking about here? Because there's two different types.
The surface water is water that is moving above ground. Now that can be rainwater, which is what I always thought this permit regulated, but it's not just that. Surface water is also defined as water that Boeing is routing around the site and dumping into unlined ponds so that it doesn't go off-site and that they don't get fined for exceedance of these permit limits. Now, the reason why that's tricky is because then it goes into the groundwater, which is the water underneath the site. And as is admitted in this document, in this permit, groundwater takes a long time to recharge. It's very hard to clean up pollutants in groundwater. And unfortunately for us living near the Santa Susana Field Lab or in the Cayugas Creek watershed, which you are probably in if you are in around Simi or in Ventura County
in general.
That groundwater in Cayugas watershed is used for agricultural purposes extensively, and a lot of our communities use groundwater for drinking water, including here in Simi Valley. So the idea that they are taking water from the site and rerouting it to unlined ponds to go into the groundwater that can then be used for drinking water is problematic.
You know, you just got me thinking that we need to, as soon as this is done, we need to contact Supervisor Parks and the other supervisors, because this, I think a lot of people often think that this is impacting just Simi Valley or just West Hills. This has major impacts for the Los Angeles River, but we'll show you in just a second the map here. It also has the potential to go into the Arroyo Simi, and that Cayugas watershed is a really large area. It covers most of Thousand Oaks. It covers most of well, we'll show you. It's huge. It's like 350 square miles, I think. And that water is used. Jenny, I'm gonna scooch over real quick to my map,
Okay,
if you don't mind.
I'll stop sharing. There you go.
Thank you. And let's see, can you see the outfalls PDF here?
No, I see the Cayugas Creek watershed.
Okay, let me stop share for a second. Sorry, guys. Let's try that again. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this is the outfall map. I kind of enlarged some of the features on it so that way you guys could all see what's going on. These are called outfalls. You'll look in the lower left corner, NPDES outfalls and description. So essentially, these are like testing sites that have been set up on the Santa Susana Field Lab to measure how much contamination there is in each area. And for that permit, they have to be within certain legal limits to be able to allow that contamination off-site without getting a fine.
And not only are they test sites, these are areas where the water is discharged. So this is where the water comes off the site or comes out of a given area.
And granted, you know, it can go down other canyons, it can kind of wash off, but this is like the major output of it. So you'll see that downstream of outfall, 1 and 2 here down at the bottom, these are benchmark only. You'll notice that we're going to talk about that in our letter in just a second. We've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are typically routed to the stormwater tank. Actually, 10 also, I believe. They're taken to the stormwater tank. This is kind of a new setup. And then when those get kind of full, it's routed down to Silvernail Pond. So the idea is they don't want to be discharging to Arroyo quite as often. But in a heavy storm, 3, 4, 10, and 9 automatically discharge into the Arroyo Simi. They're not treated in any way during heavy storms. That water goes straight to the Arroyo Simi, and you'll see it goes straight to that is a tributary, meaning that the Arroyo Simi feeds water into Cayugas Creek watershed area. From the stormwater tank, Jenny, do you want to tell us about where it goes?
So the Silvernail Pond, so you'll see the arrows pointing down to Silvernail Pond. That is one of the unlined ponds on the site. The other one is R1 over to the right.
I believe R2 might also be unlined, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
But these two for sure.
Now, Boeing confirms that yes, these ponds are indeed unlined, and yes, they are routing water to them.
Contaminated water.
Yes, and that water is then free to percolate into the groundwater. That is just a matter of fact at this point. It shouldn't be allowed, obviously, because they're essentially recontaminating the site in a way that it's going to possibly be more difficult to clean. But that's where we're at. So then they pump water at times to the SWTS, the Stormwater Treatment Station. I'm assuming the last S is for station.
Yep.
To do some filtering. Now, what we learned from a call last week with other people who do water science and know a bit more about this is that the filtration systems that Boeing has on site are not top of the line. They are filtering only to do removal of heavy metals.
Possibly.
And yeah, possibly. And I guess it's not that great of a system, but they're doing something.
It's not reverse osmosis. We know that right away. And
which is what they should be doing.
That's what, I mean, that would at least take out everything except the tritium. You know, it even remove gamma radiation and all that, but they're not. It's kind of like going through.
So once
filtration.
So once they do that treatment, a lot of this water will discharge then out through outfall 18. Outfall 18 is a outfall that is subject to limits and fines. But the other water is carried past that and picks up more pollutants as it goes, potentially, is outfall 2, which is benchmark only. We haven't described that yet, have we?
No, why don't you go ahead and do that and we'll get more into it in the letter.
Okay, so very quickly, over half of the water, Boeing suggests in their, or attests in the permit, that over 60% of the effluent, which is stormwater runoff, is coming out through outfalls 1 and 2, these 2 blue ones at this bottom of the page. Now, 60% of the water is coming out, but these 2 outfalls are not subject to limits or fines. They collect data there.
That's it.
Period.
Which is
Collect data.
terrifying, because outfalls 1 and 2, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jenny, they receive 60% of that stormwater.
Right, and this
not
Bell
just
Creek
stormwater, surface water.
that they are then drained to, that is the technical headwaters of the Los Angeles River. This is where it starts, folks. So if you like the LA River, you like to kayak there in the summers, you like to see the
People
development
fish
along
there.
it. But yeah, well, this is where it starts. The headwaters, the top of the LA River is this Bell Creek area. And the effluent, or the storm water polluted runoff from SSFL, is, you know, what we're starting with. That's the beginning of the recipe.
Yeah. So they
The
call
other
that effluent. I had to learn that.
fancy word of the month. So then these other, so yeah, sorry, 1 and 2 are not subject to fines. The other 40% of the water then is going out through outfall 8 over here on the right, Happy Valley, Dayton Canyon.
Well, I think 80%, like this is 60%,
Mhm.
but I think 40% goes. So it might be 60% might be all of the southern ones, and 40% is northern.
That's a lot. That's basically Boeing saying, hey, we have rigged this system
Yeah.
so that over half of the water coming off the site isn't even subject to this permit, being
Right.
fined by this permit.
Useless.
Yeah.
It's
So
in the letter.
that's one of our
It's
issues.
in the letter. We addressed that.
Yes.
And that was
And
in
what's
the existing permit, but there's no reason they should renew that. I mean, there's literally no reason except Boeing doesn't want to pay fines. I mean, that's it.
They can still collect the data
Right.
with a limitation and being subject to ramifications. But what should we hit next?
Happy Valley, number 8.
I don't know much about Happy Valley, except for there's been a lot of contamination found and it's not happy.
No, it's not. It's where they
And
did a lot of the chemical contamination happened there. So like extreme amounts of perchlorate, pretty much most of the chemical contamination happened in Happy Valley, and that general area is very contaminated, whereas area 4 on the left side of the map is where most of the radioactive contamination happens.
So the great thing about outfall 8, this Happy Valley site where all this chemical contamination happened, is this just happens to be the outfall for which this permit is going to remove all limits for mercury. So mercury will still be tested for and have limits set at all the other outfalls, except for 8 and I guess 1 and 2. So they're not limiting it at all, which means,
well, for mercury, right?
Right, for mercury, which means, I think Melissa, you said this yesterday, there must be a ton of it.
Right. Why else would Boeing want to have unlimited, literally unlimited amounts of contamination of mercury? We'll go through the permit with you guys. It is not the only one that they have asked to have unlimited amounts of contamination of dangerous things. And again, that drains to Dayton Canyon, that goes to the LA River. You'll notice that there is no filtration system at all. There's nothing that goes between 8 and Dayton Canyon and the LA River. The R1 pond is also unlined, meaning again that this can hold contamination. Now, is this where, remember we read yesterday, and I think we forgot to put it in the letter, but we'll put it in the more detailed comments that we're going to send out through Parents Against SSFL, but we found that they had built a berm, like a bumper made out of dirt around one of the rocket test sites, right, Jenny? Is that R1?
No, I believe that is over in the orange outfalls.
Oh, okay.
But I could be wrong, so I'm going to withhold comment because I don't want to get it wrong.
And I might be getting it wrong too, so I'll wait on that one also. But
what
essentially,
we
there
do
are
know
places that are unlined, that are intentionally allowing this contaminated water, which is heavily contaminated, especially after like what we saw with the Woolsey fire, has the potential to be very, very contaminated surface water, being allowed to sit in these unlined pools where it literally, I mean, it wants to percolate down. That's what water does.
Yep.
Contaminating the groundwater before it is then pumped to spots like this WTS underneath the R1 pond. It goes down to the perimeter pond. By the way, these dotted lines with arrows, most of those are just naturally occurring creeks or water beds. They're not tubes. So what I'm saying is that as this goes down to outfall 11 and then goes down into benchmark only number 1, it's out in the air. So if it's a windy day and contamination is blowing over from Happy Valley towards, you know, the west side, it can get, even though it's been treated already at the SWTS, it can get recontaminated. That's what I'm trying to say, is that it's not being protected after it's been, even this basic filtration system did something, but then it goes straight just through the land again. And it's quite a distance. Remember, this is what we're seeing right now is almost 3,000 acres of land. It's not a small area.
And if you look at the overall effect or strategy of what Boeing is doing, and you look at where the arrows are going, they are directing, you know, all those northern outfalls to an unlined pond so that pollution can hopefully, you know, go away. And if it doesn't, they are going to lightly treat it. And if you look at all of the arrows are directing towards, besides number 8, outfall 8, towards the south, towards those 2 final benchmarks where they don't have to pay for fines. So whether it's directing it towards groundwater or then through outfalls 1 and 2, their strategy is to not have to pay money for the pollution that they were supposed to clean up.
Right. So this is going to be on our website. If you go to our, I'll show you real quick. If you go to, that's building the website. This is our website again, is parentsagainstssfl.com. You can go here to issues, water. If you go to the send comment, that'll take you to where you can actually email in your comment in case you don't get our email. But,
sorry, Melissa, we're still looking at the outfall map.
Oh, sorry, I forget about that. Nope, cancel. Okay, anyhow, just go to our website, parentsagainstssfl.com under issues, water. You'll find it all there. Okay, so Jenny, let's go back to the letter. I'll stop sharing.
Okay. And can you see the letter?
Mm-mm.
You cannot. Sure. Let me try it again.
Okay.
I'm so excited because I just learned how to do this today.
We got it.
Okay. Okay. So this permit, can we talk about the permit now?
Yeah.
This permit is doing a couple things. First, let's let everyone know that, thank God for Audrey counting all these contaminants. Boeing has admitted and has a document that holds over 300 contaminants or constituents, okay,
Here,
chemicals and pollutants.
I have that. I'll show you.
Okay. That they know and admit have been found to be at the Santa Susana Field Lab. Okay, that's over 300, I think 310. Not including whether it's soluble or dissoluble, whatever it is. We're not going to get into that. Okay.
Right. Can you see it right now, Jenny?
No, because I'm screen sharing.
Oh.
Let me stop screen sharing and let you screen share. Now, only 35 of these are included for monitoring at the Santa Susana Field Lab.
Right now, under the permit. So if it's showing yellow right now, those are contaminants that are not being monitored at all through Boeing.
Just do the fun scroll.
Permit. Okay,
Anxiety
well, I've got to warn you,
scroll.
Jenny, because last night when I did it wrong, it still says 55 out of 310. So everybody just know it's even worse than that. If it shows gray, that's showing what is being monitored under the permit. But you can just see this list, and these are historically found at the Santa Susana Field Lab. You can also see, sorry, real quick, there's X's here are showing where it was tested and where it was found. You can see chemicals detected in permanent surface water. Inferior surface water means like seasonal water, like if it rains and a little pond collects, but then it dries out again, that's this ephemeral
Ephemeral.
ephemeral water. And so we see it, and also surface groundwater here, and then seeps and springs. So anytime it's being marked there, they found it in those columns, and you can just see how, in Dan's word, woefully inadequate this permit is, because they are not testing for a majority of the contaminants that have been found in water.
Over 90% of the contaminants are not included in the permit. That's a lot.
That's a lot. It's almost like, why bother having a permit practically?
Right. But so let's just say, let's talk
Here,
about
I'll
the
stop
35
sharing.
that are. There
I'll
are
stop
30.
sharing, and you want to
Okay.
jump back into the letter?
Sure. I don't know if they need to see the letter, but I'll put
Oh,
it up.
okay.
But, okay, so they are testing for or monitoring for 35 of these contaminants. Now, 25% of the 35
Good
are
to
being
know.
changed. And of those 25% that are being changed, almost all of them, besides two, are being either weakened or completely omitted from monitoring. So
let's sum that up again. Try that. Yeah, do it as
Okay.
one big picture
Okay.
again, because it's really shocking.
So there's 35 out of 300 and some contaminants that they're saying, okay, we're going to monitor these. We're going to test these. A quarter of those that they're testing for, they are proposing in this permit to change by weakening or omitting. 95% of the ones that are being changed are being weakened or omitted entirely from the permit for different justifications that they have. But we are suggesting, and what we're hoping that you will suggest, is that this is not acceptable.
Backwards.
Right. It's weakening it to such a state that there's almost no point of even having this permit if they're not going to.
Let me share again real quick. I want to
Yeah.
show them something.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I
Let
want them
me
to see.
Stop share.
This is one of the comparisons that the water board sent us, so that way we could see what the changes are in the permit. And so it listed out by outfall. So you'll see this page we're looking at right now is outfall 11, 18, 1 and 2, which are benchmarks. And you'll see here things like, let's go down to one that is iron was a very small amount. Now they want to have unlimited. When they say remove limit, that means unlimited. Manganese, remove limit. The one that was shocking to me, just because I'm familiar with lead and I know how dangerous it is, the one that said, hold on, let's find it. Do you remember which outfall that was under? Because this is listed in 3 groupings of outfalls. Oh yeah, here it is, right here.
Yeah.
This currently they're allowed to discharge 5.2 micrograms per liter. They want to be able to discharge 94. I don't even know how many times higher that is, but it's a lot, like 5 to 94. And then this is a little different. Now they're looking at pounds a day. So this is like a solution, but this is a pounds. From 5 pounds a day of lead being discharged every day into essentially what's going to be the LA River, also could go, well, is the TMDL?
We can't get into that because we're still getting clarification from
Okay.
Annalisa.
Anyhow, it's just outrageous. That's what I'm trying to say. The removing limits, there's no justification for that.
There
Boeing
is,
doesn't want to pay fines.
but there is I mean, it seems arbitrary, right? Why would we go from 4 micrograms of lead to 94? Well, what we did is we went and compared these new limits. They seem arbitrarily high and just completely random to another set of exceedances that were record-setting exceedances.
Do you have that?
Mhm.
I've got it.
Okay, because I'm like, I have no idea where that is right now. After the Woolsey fire, we were talking earlier in the meeting about going and listening to the water board's expert panel, try to justify why they were why there were 57 exceedances coming off of Santa Susana Field Lab. Well, if you look at how high these numbers were for each contaminant, it's so funny because now,
what?
Sorry, because now the limits that they're setting are just above the highest
worst.
exceedances that they had during the Woolsey fire.
It was
And
like worst case scenario, and they made it so they can never be fined for the worst case scenario ever again.
So it's highly unlikely that we will see these contaminants at those exceedance levels again. And so they set them just above that. So it's so unlikely that they're going to have to pay fines at the site anyway. It's horrible.
And who does that benefit? You know, who really benefits from more lead or more iron? Or, I mean, and sometimes we don't realize that like nickel is I believe it's a toxic metal. We'll have to look that up, but these are not healthy. They don't belong in the water.
And it's not justifiable. I mean, they are justifying it with these crazy loopholes they're finding, but it's not okay. This permit, the point of this permit is to protect the public health and the environment from all these toxins. Right. And that's why it was established. And so they need to strengthen it and enforce it. But instead they're gutting it. Every time they renew it, they gut it further. They're gutting it past the point that they saw during the last natural disaster at the site. And the water board's letting them, and we need to let them know that it's absolutely unacceptable. And they need to do their jobs and stop being beholden to the polluter and start doing their job, which is they're charged with protecting the public and the environment.
Here.
Sorry.
No, I agree. You're totally right. You're totally right. And the earlier permit was already inadequate. This is outrageous. I mean, it's like literally they shouldn't even have to bother with a permit at all. And why even bother? Because they're not doing anything. They really aren't.
And when they did have all those exceedances, they didn't enforce the limits anyway.
Right.
But in this permit, what we're asking is for them to not allow Boeing to continue to weaken it. These proposals of removing limits for these contaminants and to weaken them so drastically should not happen. It absolutely cannot happen. We're also asking those benchmark outfalls 1 and 2 actually be subject to limits and fines. There's absolutely no reason why 60% of the water should not be subject to limits and fines. That's just for Boeing.
Yeah. Okay, you want to pull up the letter again?
Yes.
I am just so hoping that this is recording properly, so we don't have to do it again.
Okay. Let's see. What have we not covered?
We did the outfalls.
We did the benchmarks.
We did the unlined ponds.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is big. Why don't you do that?
So we were trying to understand the justifications for the reasons that are cited in the permit for these relaxations and eliminations of contaminants. And they started talking about things that we're still trying to understand. Basically, they're loopholes for legal loopholes for being able to set these pollutants at much lower levels or higher levels.
Higher levels allowed, lower levels.
Yes.
There we go.
But right beneath that, so there's all these justifications about the impaired contaminated nature of both the Arroyo Simi and the LA River, and that's true. That being said, if I'm fat, the idea is not just keep eating donuts, right? You don't just keep putting more pollutants into the water because we care. This is something that can be controlled. They can remediate the site. We can find them and we can encourage them to come into compliance. However, after these excuses were kind of described in the document, I kept reading, kept learning, and it talked about the drinking water limits set.
Here, take that down. I want to show them the actual document. I have it right here.
Okay. Yay.
Because this is their document. This isn't us trying to find something. This is actually included in the permit right here.
113.
Mm-hmm. My dog is pulling my headphones out. The groundwater recharge, right?
Yeah. So they're discussing that, well, first, right above that, they're talking about protecting the drinking water. Okay. The drinking water is protected by these MCL maximum contamination limits in water, and that those things will be upheld at the site. They talk about in this permit, they're also incorporating these to protect the municipal and domestic supply, MUN, and groundwater recharge. And I saw that and I thought, why are we talking about drinking water right after we're talking about these impaired bodies, these excuses why we can contaminate this water? And then down in groundwater recharge, it talks about this water, these discharge points being designated as groundwater recharge because, well, citing that this is of beneficial use. So no longer saying, hey, these are just impaired waters, but acknowledging that this water and the groundwater through the Cayugas Creek watershed serves a huge part of the area in terms of the agricultural uses and drinking water.
Here we go. Agricultural operations and industry, but also moreover, much of the population in the watershed relies upon groundwater for drinking. Now, we're talking about groundwater, but the permit is for surface water. So,
right, but as they are rerouting the water to the unlined ponds that then percolate into the groundwater, the EPA already, had declared, I think, was it 2007? I always get it messed up. 2007, the EPA did say, hey, the wells that Golden State Water is using for their drinking water blend are at risk of being contaminated by contamination in the groundwater at SSFL. And here we are again. There's an acknowledgement that the groundwater from the from the Cayugas Creek watershed is being used for drinking water. We are allowing this company to discharge into the Arroyo Simi, which is a tributary of Cayugas Creek watershed. And these things are percolating into the groundwater. And that has a potential to, pollute the things we're eating and the water we're drinking. And so the limits should be kept as high as possible. They should be as restrictive as possible.
Right. And so for a while there, we thought that people drinking Golden State water were the only people at risk of really drinking, which is one of the most dangerous ways to ingest or come into contact with contamination. We're going to need to find out where these water wells are in the Cayugas Creek so we can understand better what other groups of people are at risk. But certainly agriculture, I mean, that whole area is agricultural. I mean, yeah. I'm just thinking about the strawberries of Oxnard and, all the different farms is a little overwhelming. Yes. I don't want to think about it. And hopefully, but I just want to pretend that it's not getting contaminated. But the point is this permit is meant to protect the public in this way. And instead, Boeing is just they're just being jerks. But this is really dangerous.
They are acknowledging in this document that the groundwater is being utilized for human consumption. Now,
here's my favorite line I wanted to put right there.
Oh, I want to read it.
Read it.
By limiting the pollutants in SSFL discharges, the amount of pollutants entering the surface waters and groundwater basins are correspondingly reduced. Lies. Okay, they're not reducing it at all. They're weakening it.
They're proving in their own document, buried in page 114 out of 176 pages, why those permits, why this permit is supposed to exist, why those limits are supposed to exist.
Right, and the following sentence explains why they shouldn't be doing what they're trying to do. It says, once groundwater basins are contaminated, it may take years to clean them up depending on the pollutants. Compared to surface water pollution, investigation and remediation of groundwater are often more difficult, costly, and extremely slow. For these reasons, these MCLs will remain in the permit where there's reasonable potential.
I think the reasonable potential is there. It's just the fines to convince Boeing it's not worth contaminating it are not there. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to pull back up the letter.
Yeah.
And this is why these documents take so long for us to go through. Not only like for me, am I actually learning what an MCL is, maximum contamination limit. We have to fine tooth go through every line to see really what the bigger picture is, because a lot of people have told me they think that maybe we're overreacting. Maybe Boeing isn't so bad. Maybe we're just like jumping down their throats and splitting hairs and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, when you see something this blatantly dangerous, this is not an accident. They had lawyers write this up. Well, hypothetically, Boeing didn't write this. I just can't believe that's true.
Sure.
I mean, I really cannot believe this. I was under the impression the entire time until Dan corrected me last night that this was Boeing's proposal to the water board. It is not. This is coming from the water board.
Which is why we would argue that they are a captured agency. They are doing the bidding of the polluter that they are meant to regulate and to bring into compliance. Now, up in the beginning of this permit, if you were to say, hey, yeah, I want to read the permit, I want to get informed, well, you're going to be very comforted because in the very beginning it says that they are upholding these standards. They are just as stringent in all cases, that are possible, and they are all subject to what's called an anti-backsliding law. It's illegal to do what they're doing. I mean, they're finding loopholes, but you can't just arbitrarily drop restrictions on effluent limits.
And as testing gets better and as technology gets better, we should see more strengthening of these restrictions. They should get tighter, not looser. I mean, that's literally like going backwards for no good reason, except Boeing doesn't want to pay. I do want to put in a disclaimer that the actual chair, the actual board members may not have put this together. In fact, they probably didn't. This is probably coming from the water board staff, the people who work there full time.
I don't know who wrote it, but I guarantee you not all of them who are voting on it have read all of this.
No, because they work part-time. This isn't
Right.
like, for many of them, this is not their day job. This is, they're supposed to oversee all these permits to make sure that the water board staff isn't corrupt. And that's why we are going to be needing everybody to send in letters, because we need to actually get the attention of the voting members to realize what has come out of the water board staff. It might as well have just come out of Boeing. It's so bad, and they may not even be aware how bad it is, because they have so many of these to go through, 200 pages. It took us like 3 weeks to go through.
Well, and if they read the first, the first
summary.
quarter of it, they are going to say, okay, this sounds good. This sounds good. You have to go to page 142 to look at the tables and realize, oh no, they aren't keeping stringent limits. They're actually omitting and reducing.
And also too, the thing that this permit doesn't make very clear in that summary in those first few pages is that we've had a drought for the last 2 years. So the measuring that has come off of the Santa Susana Field Lab has not been a full picture of what the next 5 years are going to look like. Not only that, the wet season that we just had, and like yesterday, that data isn't going to be released until after the water board makes its, we're pretty sure that testing quarter won't be available until later in February, but the meeting to vote on this permit is early February. So they won't even have data that really gives them a fair idea of what's potentially able to come off of the hill. Is that right, Jenny?
Yes, I'm going to say purposely, even though that might not be the most responsible thing to say. I believe that they purposely have set the timing of this to exclude the 2 quarters of the rainy season. So when they give an explanation, a justification, or they call it a basis for reducing or eliminating a constituent from this, list to be monitored, they are citing the reason, oh, well, there hasn't been exceedances in recent monitoring history. We don't need to look for this anymore because it's not showing up. Well, yeah, it's been a drought. This is stormwater discharge. If there hasn't been a storm and it's not raining, of course you don't have that data. But we can go back to 2019 and look at the rainy season following the Woolsey fire and see tons of exceedances. So I guess our argument and what we will be asking in our personal letters is we're asking for something really big. We are saying, you know what, this voting on this is eliminating a huge data set of stormwater discharge. And we want you to actually postpone voting on this so that we can get those 2 quarters of rainwater, let's see what's actually coming off the hill. I saw videos last week of tons of waterfalls created. I mean, it's a huge amount of water. Even when that water comes off, they only have to test. If there's a week of rain, they only have to test one time.
Oh, why is that not in our letter?
I don't know. We should put it in there.
Oh my gosh.
But
Denny just hit on a very sore spot of how often they have to test for some of these contaminants. So they have like, they categorize the contaminants, and I don't know if I have that right in front of me, but there's like, some of it is considered a chemical of
concern.
No, there's one that's like unusual and one that's a priority pollutant. You know what I'm talking about?
Okay, yes.
Let me see if I can find it. Can you pull that down real quick?
Yeah, and I'll try to, if you don't mind, I'll try to quickly. So many of these pollutants are measured either once a year or during discharge, during, a rainy season, a rain event. But if it continues to rain, you only have to test it for once in a given week. So during a drought, you only have to test one time in a year.
Right. Some of them every 5 years, some of them every 7, I thought we saw too.
Yes, but that isn't in this, is it?
I thought it would be in the permit. Yeah, it's got to be.
I don't remember.
Or was it in the final limits comparison? Oh, no. It might have been here. Hold on. It's hard because there's like these documents, there's a lot of them too. This is talking
and
about
that was something that was interesting. So when you look just at the permit, so
oh,
we're all trying to go through the
filtering.
permit. There's so many issues, but here's the interesting thing. So we're looking at this 150 some page document, and we all have these questions. And so Melissa says, you know what, we can't get through this in the deadline. I'm going to email the water board and ask for an extension, which, if there are any water board people watching this, thanks for the extra week. We actually really appreciated it because we really needed it to get through all this stuff.
We could have used more, but it was still helpful. It was still helpful.
Thanks. But they actually said, and she said, hey, do you have a document where, can you show me a list of the changes? They didn't send out a list of the proposed changes. You had to go through a 150 page document and just really comb through it quite carefully to understand. But they sent Melissa upon request. They did have a list of the proposed changes. They did have, 7 pages of tables or whatever it is that you could analyze without having to read through all this mess. But she had to request it. That sucked.
Okay, I'm not seeing it.
I don't remember where it was. It's okay. They don't need to know. They're going to trust us.
Well, okay. We'll list it on the website. How about that? Or in the comments or something.
We can screenshot it and put it on the
screenshot it. We'll tell you what page because they're saying that some of these contaminants only have to be tested for once a year or once every 5. And I believe there were some that were once every 7, which is absurd. Then they're allowed to filter some of them.
Okay, so
they're tested.
Okay, so out of 35 that they are testing for, only 13 are required to be unfiltered.
Why would you even filter something before monitoring?
I wonder why. Okay, so just think for a second. Out of over 300 contaminants, they're only testing for 35, and they're only 13 of those have to be unfiltered.
Some of these are not just like your regular, it's not simple green being dumped down the hillside. Like some of these are pretty gnarly. We have to do more research to be able to show you guys which ones we're particularly concerned about. Like I was really concerned about benzene, but then we realized that benzene evaporates quickly. It's probably not going to be found in the groundwater. But I did look up some of these, and a lot of them were rated as highly toxic to aquatic life.
Yeah.
And they're not even being monitored.
Little joke. All this PDF makes me need is a stronger eyeglass prescription.
I think it makes me need like anxiety medicine, anxiety attack medicine.
So what are the final things that we need to tell? I think we've
probably told them more than they needed to know, but hopefully this is empowering to you guys. And we want to be able to keep this up online and make it available because you guys should at least understand why we're writing this letter. why Boeing is doing this intentionally. We're not making this up. It's so crazy. It feels like it. It's so crazy. I wish we were making it up, but we're not. And also too, we're gonna eventually get this video out maybe to other communities who might have to deal with their own water board issues to be able to understand it too, because I promise you it is not just here and it is not just Boeing.
Can we see the animal that's growling?
Well, he's got a cute little sweatshirt on today because I gave him the worst grooming job ever, and that's Blondie. Hi, Blondie.
Hi, guys.
Yeah, it's a zoo over here all the time. So that letter needs to get in today. You are more than welcome to customize it
By 5
p.m. You are more than welcome to. My dogs are like having two little siblings. They're just like arguing over.
You can copy and paste ours. You can. Yeah. I mean, you can just send it on.
Put your name on it and send it. It's totally fair.
Or you can.
Or you can add your own notes or customize it. You can always say why this matters to you.
You can tell them how you really feel.
Yeah, and they need to know because, you know, this is like we were saying the other day, for some people and probably for some of the water scientists on the staff, on the water board staff and people like that, in college, they probably did problems like this hypothetically. Hypothetically, if 94 micrograms of lead per liter were coming off a hill, hypothetically, how many animals would die, right?
Well, yesterday, I was wishing it was hypothetical yesterday.
Right. This is our community, and these are our kids, and there are children playing in the LA River because they did that revitalization program. There are kids playing in the Simi Arroyo's, the watershed, Callegas Creek watershed, because that goes out into Point Magoo. That's where it discharges into the Pacific Ocean. And
just for our locals, you know, when you drive through the canyons, through Bell Canyon or Box Canyon, you know, getting over the hill right after it rains, and there are all those really pretty shiny seeps and springs, those seeps and springs are a column in that Boeing document of where these pollutants are found.
Right, and where they come out to the surface.
Right, so they're pretty, but.
And also too, we have to remember that it's not always just the surface water. Surface water to me is especially concerning because like that ephemeral. I sound so smart when I say it right. It dries out. And so if you have, you know, particulate matter of arsenic, let's say.
It evaporates.
Well, the water evaporates. And then now you have that contaminant as dust, which then the next Santa Ana wind is going to blow that dust into the community again.
We need to encourage the board to bring Boeing into compliance.
And to see the bigger picture. And that it's not hypothetical. And so I would just like to encourage you, you do not have to be a water scientist. You do not have to understand this whole video. As a resident, and for me as a parent, I have the right to say what I want in my community. I do not want a contaminated environment for my children to live near. I don't want it. And I have the right to say that. And so I just encourage you guys to, you don't have to be an expert on this to say, you know, I only know what lead is, but I know it's bad. And I don't want my kids to be at risk of touching it, drinking it, having to breathe it if it evaporates out. It just makes me so mad, you know?
I would like to add, sorry, maybe I've had too much coffee. I'd like to add, if anybody has any questions, anything they want to know, anything.
We'll find someone who knows the answer.
Yes, and that's been kind of the interesting part about this. We're meeting a lot of scientists from a lot of different organizations, and we're finding that we can get answers to things we don't understand. So if you have a question, we'll help you get the answer.
Yep. All right. Thank you guys. For anyone who lasted through this whole video, we are so impressed with you. I hope you feel smart. I hope you feel empowered. And we're going to make this happen. We'll keep you guys posted on any more updates as we get them. Bye, Jenny.
Bye.
Have a great day.
You too.
Okay.
Bye.